Hi, I'm Helen. My pronouns are they, she, or anything offered with love. I am a mom, a writer, a photographer, an artist, small business owner, religious educator, and I am a Unitarian Universalist minister in formation. I am a chaplain for the UU Young Adult Revival Network. I am an intern community-based minister in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I am the owner and operator of Blessed Be by HP Rivers and the Rapid Response Mutual Aid Fund by Blessed Be. Last year, I earned letters after my name when I earned my MA in Social Change from Star King School for the Ministry, a Unitarian Universalist Identity Seminary, where I received an absolutely spectacular education in multi-religiosity, social movements, and how we are the ones we have been waiting for to build the beloved community, and learning about movements of the past and building movements of the future. Cool thing about me is I got the brand of autism where I have a strong sense of justice, and and I'm also a perfectionist, but I also have ADHD, so I only hyper focus on things that I'm super interested in, and I am super interested in the intersection of trauma, religion, and social movements, and how so many of the social issues we are facing right now are large-scale trauma responses to past issues and ongoing issues as well. I'm a proud Unitarian Universalist, pagan, non-binary, solo parent, neurodivergent. I have lots of titles and identities, but the thing to know about me is that I'm a pastor. I've actually never talked about this before. Wow. I'm that person that if I run into somebody having a really rough day, I am going to stop and make sure that I do whatever I can to make it a little bit better. I remember a couple years ago I was walking in downtown Knoxville, and I've literally never told this story because I don't tell these kinds of stories. Like, this is the thing, that people close to me know that these things happen, but I don't tell these stories. But this has been a few years, so. Walking down Gay Street in Knoxville with my family, and I see this girl who was probably like in her early 20s. She was wearing a server's apron, and she was just sobbing. She was sitting on the sidewalk outside of the restaurant just sobbing, and my mama bear radar went off, and then my gaydar went off, and then I just had to stop, and I was just like, hey, are you okay? I've worked in restaurants for so long. I know what it feels like when you just hit your breaking point with jerks in a service job. And I asked her if I could give her a hug, and she said yes, and I gave her a big hug, and I handed her, I think, a 20, so that's what I had on cash, because I think she was crying about getting stiffed on a really, really big check, which is just the worst feeling when it's only made worse if they leave you Bible propaganda instead, but that's another conversation. But anyway, and I say that to say this, I was born to do that. I was called. There is no doubt about it. When I was very young, the only way I knew how to articulate it was that I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to help people. And so I went into college thinking I would study psychology and be a therapist, and then I thought I would be a social worker. And I was studying social work, and when we evaluate someone in social work setting, we do a biopsychosocial spiritual evaluation, right? But that spiritual component was what I kept getting hung up on, because it seemed that so many people would benefit from connection with something greater than themselves. Even if that's community, it doesn't have to be God. I don't really care what other people believe, as long as they feel fulfilled and at peace with it. As a social worker, there's only so much you can do. You're pretty much just doing damage control all the time. It's not even damage control, it's triage care. And that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to really tend to people and tend to communities. And I have worked with children since I was a child. I started babysitting when I was my youngest sibling was born when I was 8, so that's when I started babysitting. And I started working at a camp when I was 15, 16, and I fell in love with it. I loved that work. And I work with kids in RE at my home church in Knoxville, and I also worked with kids in a residential treatment facility for kids with neurobiological disorders, which really overall meant fetal withdrawal syndrome, autism spectrum disorder, or some sort of other sort of neurodivergence, and trauma. Some kids it was just trauma. And it was very eye-opening for me to work both with the incredibly privileged kids who went to a camp with 3 pools and a zip line and a climbing tower, and it was awesome. Like, it was awesome, and had like the best trained staff in the state easily, and I learned a lot there. But working with kids in the hospital was really different. Working with kids in the hospital while I was raising a toddler was really hard. Burned out in 3 months, and pretty soon after that, in like 2018, my life like fell apart. My life fell apart, and the people who I thought would be there weren't, and the people in the communities I thought would be there weren't. But the people who were there to help me pick up the pieces and put myself and my life back together and find my way was my church community, my faith community, the Unitarian Universalist church community, and it meant everything. It has been life-changing, life-saving, I would even say. I've been working towards becoming a minister since 2018, shortly after my life fell apart. Funny how stuff like that happens. Your life falls apart, and then you find your purpose. Your life falls apart, and then you find something so much better than you dared to let yourself dream for. Sometimes things fall apart so they can fall back together. The most significant barrier I've faced in this process is not being neurodivergent. It's not being femme presenting. It's not being trans. It's not being a single parent. It's not even being a first generation college student. It's not being queer. The most significant barrier I have faced in this process of formation is finances. It costs a lot of money to become a Unitarian Universalist minister, and we do need to have a larger conversation about how ableism and classism factors into that. A lot of my colleagues, including a lot of my most respected teachers, went to Ivy League schools, and I love that for them. I went to community college, and I'm proud of that. I'm honestly more proud of my 2-year degree that I earned starting when my son was 6 months old than I am of my graduate degree, because by the time I got my graduate degree, I knew I could do it, and I had been loved into being by something bigger than me that I was able to trust when I didn't feel like I had enough energy left to go on. The hardest thing I've ever had to do is heal from things that are not my fault, but ultimately became my responsibility. Something that a lot of people face and may or may not know how to sit with and work through. I can't make anything better for anybody. I can't change anything, but there is so much power in just bearing witness, being there with someone, even when you can't make it better, even when there's nothing to be done. Because one of the most harmful things we can do to somebody when they are hurting is turn away without acknowledging their pain. We don't have to stop our worlds for people, but it's important, it is so important to acknowledge where people are and what they're going through. Not everyone has the privilege of family who can be that for them. Not everybody has the privilege of a safe space. If we're lucky, we get people along the way who know that it's going to get better before we believe it, and hold on to the hope for a little while when we don't have any. I got that and it saved my life. My name is Helen. I'm a hope holder. I promise not to bring any toxic positivity bullshit into our conversations because that's not necessary and not helpful. Blessed be.